Hello everybody, welcome to the second day of our Attitude Festival. You're tuned in to what is it like to work in management accounting. So I've got two fantastic guests with me today that are here to talk about their experience of working in management accounting. I'm going to let them introduce themselves in a second, but hopefully everyone has been enjoying the last 2 days and we're all strapped in and ready to go for the final 3 days of this week. If you have got questions for anyone that's watching live, please put them in the chat box. My name is David Malthouse. I'm a tutor here at First Intuition, and I have taught management accounting for 15 years now. So I've taught lots and lots of people to be management accountants. I've worked as a management accountant as well. So I worked as a financial controller for only for about 2 years or so. Before that, I worked in accounting practice. So I'm really keen to find out what our panel here today have got to say about their careers in management accounting. So I'm going to introduce each of my panel members one by one and just give them a chance to talk a little bit about who they are and what they do. So first of all, I'm going to introduce to you Noah Davis. So Noah, take it away.
Good afternoon all. My name's Noah Davis. I work for a building society. I've been within the financial sector for probably five and a half years now. So I worked elsewhere beforehand, but I'm sure we'll come on to that in a little while.
Excellent stuff. So no, you're working in a building society, but you've missed out a few key things there. That no, you're actually shortlisted to be the Part Qualified Accountant of the Year in the Accountancy Professions Awards this year. So I think that's something to be massively proud of. Because I think there were only five students that were nominated for that actually made the shortlist for that.
Yeah, there's five other accountants shortlisted, and it's something which just entirely took me by surprise. It's something I never expected. I do subscribe to the magazine. When they did come, I'd show my parents, I'd show them different articles. So to finally have my name in there, it was a bit surreal.
No, for me, I mean, I taught you, Noah, and I think it was thoroughly deserved. And I think we'll come to some of the reasons that maybe behind that nomination a little bit later on in terms of the the reasons why PQ magazine may have looked upon you and put you forward for that. But I think massively deserved. So really well done on that, because I haven't had a chance to say face to face. For those of you that are unaware of Noah already, Noah is someone that I have taught. So I've taught Noah for some of his studies, and for actually I think your last management accounting exam I taught you for.
Yeah, certainly did.
Excellent. And I'm going to hand over to someone who strangely has the same surname as me. It is actually my younger brother. I'm introduced to my brother Ian, who is, for my money, one of the most interesting accountants to speak to. I'm utterly fascinated by some of the stories that he has about the jobs that he's had and about the work that he's done. So with that build up, Ian, do you want to say a few words about you and about the kind of, the career that you've had to date?
Wow, what a build up. Thanks, David. Yeah, I'll go through some of my career highlights, if you don't mind. I'll spend a few minutes just going through that and talk about my route into accountancy. So first of all, I suppose I've been an accountant for 22 years all in all, including my time in practice when I qualified. It took me 3.5 years to get qualified. I did fail a couple of exams. I'm sure we'll talk about that. David likes to talk about that a little bit. Then finally qualified, that would have been about 19 years ago. Then from then I've kind of hopped around lots of different roles. So first half of my career was really based as an auditor, and the second half was more in management accounts, and eventually in the role I've got at the moment as a site financial controller. So some of the highlights of being an auditor: I worked for a building society, a regional building society similar to Noah. There I looked at lots of different areas, including mortgage underwriting, banking underwriting, commercial mortgages. But I did spend some time looking at branch audits, and one of the things that I experienced there was a fraud. So it's really interesting that you can go from an accounting background into looking at fraud. And I recall vividly interviewing a teller at a building society who had committed a fraud, and they admitted it to me there, and it was a harrowing experience for me and for them and for the branch. But yeah, that was one of the things that I did at the building society. I moved on, I worked for one of the large banks. And again, a project there which was really interesting was looking at US sanctions at the time. And I was literally looking at transactions that referenced Hussein and Osama specifically. And it was really interesting how basic the systems were, that we had to actually eyeball these transactions and to see whether they were valid transactions or whether they were against US sanctions. From there, I then went on to work for an insurance broker, again as an auditor, and that insurance broker actually owned the brand Compare the Market. And I was there when they first launched Alexander the Meerkat. That was really interesting because they'd relaunched 2 or 3 times already until they finally came across Alexander the Meerkat. And even in that one, it was a left field marketing company that presented that option. They went through 4 other different ideas before they came across Alexander the Meerkat and finally happened across it. So it was a bit lucky. And I actually remember speaking to the managing director just before I left and actually asked him the ridiculous question now, which is, don't you think Alexander might have a bit of a shelf life? Well, obviously not. He's still going strong. From there, I then went into financial control, and I worked for a dried fruit and nut company. And there my life was all about stock and creditors and PPV, nothing else. So I hadn't even put together management accounting outside of practice until way into my career. So there I looked at PPV. Those that don't know what PPV is, it's about purchase price variance. And there I was looking at anything around buying fruit and nuts that might affect the price. So that could be seasonality, that could be geography, that could be climate, like fires in California, which affects the nut price. That could be weather, like frost in apricots, in Turkey, which affect apricot prices. It could be politics. There was an Iran nuclear deal going on around at the time, and we had to stop supply of raisins from Iran. There's freight issues, and I'm really interested in what might have happened with the Suez just recently in terms of difficulty in getting, in that case, it would have been sultanas from China. Foreign exchange, obviously, and quality. We had a salmonella issue in coconuts, for example. Then I went on to work for a car garage company. I was the financial controller, reported to the board in a private equity-backed business that grew from 11 garages to 30 when I decided to leave. And now finally, I'm a financial controller for a pork, sauce and sausage factory just south of Cambridge.
Thanks, Ian. That was brilliant. And as one of the things that I wanted to kind of just touch on there is that there are so many different things that you've done, and from uncovering fraud within a building society. I love the fact that you were like Detective Ian for a while, and being like anti-terrorist police, okay, to make sure that transactions going through a bank weren't directly funding terrorists. Okay, love the fact that you're doing that. You then were helping with the project around Compare the Meerkat. And I mean, that's if you just think that one project that you were involved in, how many people on a daily basis just say simples? Is that I would hear that every single day when I'm around people. People will just say that, and that's just stemmed from that. And there were finances behind that decision. Something, and people that have been in class with me will know, I talk about your love of fruit and nuts in virtually every management accounting class, because the thing that people don't really get is that you said your entire job there was dealing with purchase price variances. Okay, for those of you that otherwise it's like direct material variances, price variances. So just prices, just materials, that was your full-time job. And it's just nuts when we do those big variance statements, and there are variances across 3 different types of costs. There are usage and there are price variance. You were just doing one of those. It's just amazing that one job can be, what's your price variance? And where you were talking about, could it be famine? Could it be salmonella? Could it be a boat stuck in the Suez Canal? These are all the kind of things that we try and get people to generate in the exam as ideas why variances could have arisen. Okay, so I think really interesting. And now, just at the best place, making sausages every day. Okay, and the accounts behind that. So thanks a lot for me. And I think what we've got is we've kind of got, Ian, you're qualified, you've been working for a period of time, you've had quite an extensive amount of experience. And Noah, your accounting journey is probably slightly more in its infancy. You've completed your AAT and now you're working through ACCA. So Noah, if I ask you kind of like, you're kind of now at the point where you're looking towards the end point in your qualification. But if we go back to the beginning, could you just tell me a little bit about why you chose accountancy, and also kind of knowing a little bit about, you know, what were you doing beforehand, and why did you decide on accountancy as a new career path?
Well, it's quite a long, drawn out process. My move over into accountancy. I went through school, had a natural flair with numbers, left, and I went into a trade. I went into paint spraying, and I stayed paint spraying for about 5 years.
Mhm.
And I went through automotive, so I done trucks, I done cars, I'd done everything automotive related. And then I moved over to a bespoke furniture maker. And so I was just in a spray shop all day, every day. But then I was working around people who just had so much more drive and just wanted to get out of a factory setting.
Mhm.
So they're doing courses, they're just trying to improve themselves. And just the natural flair with numbers came out. So with furniture making, it's always, everything's in boards.
Mhm.
Everything's made out of boards. So if they needed measurements, they'd sometimes start coming to me just for the odd measurement. And then it got to the point where I was getting knocks on the spray booth all day, every day. How many boards do I need now? Can you do this? Can you do that? Just calculations. So I thought I need to progress with this. I need to make something of this. So I looked around, and accountancy was always there in the background. And so I started looking at different training providers.
Mhm.
And then I believe it was September 2015, I actually gave yourself an email just out of the blue. I think you were my fourth college, which I looked into.
Right. Okay.
So and you're the first person who I really connected with.
Mhm.
So I left work, I turned up covered in dust, covered in paint, in my work clothes, and we sat down and had a conversation out of hours. And you really took that time just to embrace me and just show me the ropes.
Mhm.
And after that, I was sold. I joined that September.
Yep.
I used to come every single Monday evening after work, covered in dust, covered in paint. And 4 or 5 months later, I then got an apprenticeship, and that's how it all began.
Yeah.
So I progressed all through my AAT with yourselves, got that milestone done, and then it's the choice, what do I do next?
Mhm.
So then I moved on to ACCA. So yeah, it wasn't the traditional route, but we got there in the end.
No, I love, no, I love hearing stories like that, and I think that brings so much value to people watching this on record, people who might be listening to it, or whatever. Just because it just shows that it doesn't really matter what you're doing. It doesn't matter at what stage in life you're at. You've always got the option to improve in one way or another, and whether that is career changes, starting your studies. I just think absolutely amazing. And one of the things that I remember you telling me on the first time we met is, I remember saying to you, if you've got to finish work, are you going to be able to get here on time? And you said, yeah, I will, because I've already done a test run. And it's like you thought that much into it that you knew that you were going to be able to get to college in time to start studying after finishing work. And that just was so impressive. And you know, a lot of the fact that you did that, and you're absolutely right, you turned up, you know, covered in your work clothes. Most other people turned up in a suit and tie after a day in the office, but I know that every single person in the office knows exactly who you are, Noah. Okay, because you know of the way that your enthusiasm is so infectious, and you know, people are just willing success. And I think that's again another thing, that you know, if you are enthusiastic and you really want to achieve, you tend to get buy-in from those around you. So no, I absolutely love that, and I know there are lots of people that have contacted me already that have done something similar. They've started their study journey, but now they're looking at how do they get into a role, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. So I'm afraid, Ian, you've got to follow that. Tell me about why you chose accountancy.
That's so inspiring, isn't it? Yeah, I can't get close to that. I was similar to Noah in that, you know, I had a flair, if you like, for numbers. I did a maths and stats degree, and you know, struggling really to know what to do with my life. You know, I wanted to get a job. I wanted to get a job. I thought I was good at numbers, and so I kind of tried to go that route. I did apply for the big, I think it was 5 at the time, accountancy. I think I went through 4 of the big 5 and didn't get anywhere. I was very lucky to be picked up by an accountancy firm in Cambridge. and studied from there really, and just went through the chartered route, the traditional chartered route. At the end, I think I got a bit fed up with not being able to influence companies from that external audit side of things. So wanted to get closer to a company. I thought I got a really good offer to be an internal auditor at a regional building society, and went that route. And then my career kind of went in twists and turns after that, which I've already explained.
Excellent, thanks, Ryan. And Noah's already said that he used First Intuition as a training provider, and he studied via classroom courses. If memory serves, Ian, you also studied in a classroom for your accountancy studies, I think, as well. Okay, so both you came from that route. I know, Noah, you started with the AAT qualification and then went on and did ACCA. Ian, you went straight in and did ICAEW, I believe.
Yeah, straight into ACA. Yeah, studied at ATC Cambridge on Cherry Hinton Road. Actually, a guy called Tim Howes is one of my teachers. I think you had him on your podcast recently.
Yeah, Tim's actually, I think, presenting some of our festival this week. So when he looks at this, he'll be glad to be name checked by one of his former students, I'm sure. Excellent. So that's a bit of our backgrounds about where you guys have come from, and a little bit about the places that you work. So let's look into management accounting itself. Now, I know that there's a kind of a battle or a fight between financial accounting and management accounting, and the financial accountants think that their job's the best, and management accountants think that their job is the best. And I think we all know that management accounting is best, because that's why we're in this room. But the criticism of management accounting is always that there are no rules, it's all made up, it's all guesswork. At least financial accounts are 100% accurate. So I guess in your own words, what do you think of as, what do you think management accounting actually is? Bearing in mind all of those criticisms. So I guess, Noah, what's your impression of what you think management accountants, management accounting actually is, or what management accountants do?
I find management accounting, everyone has got a different perspective of what it entails. But for me, it's being able to analyze data in a very specific way to make it simple. Because in an organization, not everyone has a financial background, and you've got to be able to turn numbers into words, and you've got to make it simple. So you've got to give commentary, you've got to give very short, sharp, precise analysis as to what has happened. And it can be so complicated, but you need to turn it simple. So you need to have good communication skills, you need to have good people skills. And I find half of my role is just translation. If you can just translate the numbers into words, you'll get as far as you can. For me, that's what management accounting is.
So I love that, Noah, and I 100% agree with all the things you said there. In my time when I worked as a management accountant, when I moved into the role, they'd never had anyone do that role before. They'd never had a full-time financial controller, and the management accounts had been produced by their auditors. So their auditors came in and they sent a team in once a month to produce their management accounts, and all they did is they effectively produced monthly statutory accounts. So they had a P&L, they had a balance sheet, they had a cash flow statement, they had notes to the accounts, and then a bunch of variances afterwards. And I was sat in my first board meeting, and they had these management accounts presented to them, because I'd only just come in. So I sat in the board meeting and they just picked them up, kind of flicked through them, put them to one side, and didn't do anything with them. And the very next board meeting, what I did is I produced the same thing that they'd always had, but then I also produced a single page document that on one side had a cash flow forecast, not cash flow statement, so cash flow forecast, forecasting cash for the next week, the week after that, the week after that, the month after that, and then for 6 months. And then on the other side, I had a list of debtors in terms of who owed us money and how old it was, and where we were in terms of milestones on a project. And I handed the two documents out, and the directors were blown away with my two sides of one page of an A4 document, saying it was the most useful thing an accountant had ever produced for them, because it just took what they needed and communicated it in a simple way. And I think that that's one of the traps that a lot of accountants get into, is they think that management accounts should be as close to financial accounts as possible, and that's not necessarily their purpose. So Ian, same question to you. What do you think management accounting actually is?
Yeah, Noah just put that brilliantly, actually. I agree with what he said. Yeah, you can easily, well, not easily, but you can churn out numbers every month and produce the same thing, and people will get bored and people will think, well, why am I seeing this all the time? So it's all about interpreting those numbers. So it might be that one week I might look at overtime, for example. I might do a chart on overtime and explain why overtime has moved, why it's a problem, how much it's costing us now if we've got increased overtime. And might look the next week, I might look at our downgrades. And what I mean by that is you might have a free range piece of meat and you might not be using it as free range. You might be downgrading it into something else because you can't use it. So then you'll have to look at your demand. Have you got your demand right? Are you ordering the right products? Are your planners working efficiently and effectively? Otherwise, it's going to cost you money from a downgrade point of view. So it's all about taking a massive, great GL with hundreds and hundreds of lines and deciding, right, what do my accounts look like first? And then from those accounts, okay, what do I want the business to focus on, particularly this week? What is an issue? Is it one of those issues? Is it something else? Is it a huge stock adjustment that I can't explain, I need someone to look into, etc.? So it's all about translation of a set of numbers and then producing something that someone can then work with. And Noah put it brilliantly. It's about making complicated things, because a lot of things we look at as a management accountant are really complicated, making them simple and delivering a message that people can understand.
And I think before we started, I asked you to kind of define what management accounting is, and you gave me a really nice kind of like a really brief, almost textbook definition of what you thought management accounting was. So could you just run through that again?
What was that, David? I don't remember.
You talked about management accounting is about, it's about providing information for the people who run the business.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's about pushing the business in the right direction as a result of the numbers. So yeah, taking the numbers, presenting them, and being able to direct the business into what's important. Yeah,
absolutely. So it's the kind of the decision makers in the organization need to have the right ammunition to make good decisions, and you're giving them that ammunition. You're giving them the data that they need to make the right decisions. Okay, which means as Noah said, it's got to be understandable to them. It's got to be relevant to them. And we've got to give them the right kind of information. So now I'm surprised you forgot, because it's such an insightful piece of comment. Before we press.
Working with one director in particular who said to me, "You give me the bullets and I'll fire them," which I think is still pertinent now to any management account job.
Yeah, absolutely. So what it's saying there is that I want to make good decisions. You give me the ammunition and I'll make good decisions. Yeah, really, really like that. Cool. Okay, so I think a lot of people here have studied some management accounting or are thinking about their kind of their AAT journey or their accountancy journey. And you two have both worked in management accounts. So could you give me a kind of a flavour of what a typical day looks like for you? So I'm going to start with Noah again. So Noah, could you kind of give the guys here an idea of what you would do on a typical day as a management accountant?
A typical day for myself is very dependent on the week. We have a 4-week cycle at my work. Week 1 and week 2 is the actual processing of management accounts, creating the management accounts, and just performing key components. Mm-hmm. Once we have a management accounts, they're then analysed, and then we create packs. So it'll be for our senior management team, our exec team, and also separate committees. Mm-hmm. Once they're all done, I get about a week of downtime. So week 3, I'll be focusing on projects. Mm-hmm. And then week 4, it's then preparation for the next month end. So it is all dependent on the time of the month, but it's quite systematic and it works. And it's quite varied, to be fair. You have 2 weeks of intense output, a week of downtime where you get to have a little tinker, play around, and then you have a week of prep.
Yeah, I've heard that so many times from people that, from particularly students who work in management accounts, where, I couldn't do my homework because it was month end. You know, it's
Yeah.
month end, so I couldn't submit my mock exam, or I can't do this course because it's month end. And you know, typically, you're absolutely right. You know, that month end can be, you know, up to 2 weeks in terms of time frame. I've known some firms do it in shorter time periods, but yeah, you're absolutely right. There are those things, and that's what I kind of I almost asked it as a leading question of what's a typical day, and you answered it kind of you know, very well. But it's kind of, the reality is there isn't a typical day, because it depends on where you are in that month. You've got the beginning part of the month, which is going to be very process driven, very deadline driven. You've got that week where I guess the deadlines aren't there, but you're doing that really important work to improve your processes, improve your systems, make things better, and then you're prepping for the next hectic 2-week periods. So Ian, do you have a typical day?
No, very similar to Noah. So my week, I suppose, my typical week will start off on a Monday and Tuesday with me and my team trying to translate the results, put them together, put them into a set of accounts that we then submit. And then Tuesday lunchtime is our submission deadline. So we have to get all of our numbers in by then. Then we go through a presentation on Tuesday afternoon with our managers and go through and present our numbers so that they can understand them and they can present them upwards. On a Wednesday, we have our site team meeting, which is really important. So that's where we go through our numbers, and that's where I can then direct people where I want them to look, whether that's, as I said, like overtime downgrades or whatever. And then on the Thursday and the Friday, that's when, or Wednesday afternoon, Thursday and Friday, that's when I can direct my time wherever I want to, whether it's looking at costing, whether it's looking at projects, whether it's working with the commercial team and looking at what they think about their margins at the moment, etc. And there's so many different teams that you can work with. You can work with the supply chain team, you can work with the production team, the commercial team, new product development. So all sorts of different areas. I'm working quite heavily with procurement at the moment. For example, I'm looking at demand tracking and understanding how much packaging we'll need next week and how many of certain ingredients we're going to buy over the next few weeks. So, but then I would also look at the month. So from a monthly point of view, the first week of the month is all about month end. It's all about producing the accounts for the last month. The second week of the month is then all about Sarbanes-Oxley. We're ultimately owned by an American company, so we have to comply with SOX regulations. So we have to do a ream of SOX tests. So a lot of my week in the second week is dedicated to that. And then the third, fourth, and sometimes fifth weeks of the month, some of that project work that I've talked about, also budgeting and forecasting. So every quarter we'll have to reset the forecast or reset the budget. So I'll be going through the process of building that from scratch.
Cool, thanks, Ian. So there is actually a question linked to that in the that one of the audience has just asked, saying, do you use forecasting in management accounting? If so, how is it applied? So could you give me an example of what you would need to forecast and then what methodology you use for forecasting?
Sure, yeah. So when it comes to overheads, I suppose technically you'd probably call it zero-based forecasting. So kind of starting with nothing, what are my overheads going to be every month? So build it up. I don't like zero-based forecasting purely because it doesn't give you any scope for, oh, I need to spend this or oh, I need to spend that. So sometimes I like to kind of add something in some of those overheads categories. So very much looking at that. And then when I look at margin, often it'll be based on standards. Really, really important in any manufacturing business to get your standards right. If your standards are wrong, then you're going to have variances, which are going to be very hard to forecast. But you will always have variances. And in some cases, you have to forecast those variances. So if you think your rate variance is not going to be quite right now it's really difficult to get hold of labor. We have to pay overtime quite a lot. Our rate variance isn't going to be quite right on labor. So we might forecast an overspend there. So build it all up from scratch. And that would go for a manufacturing company like the one I'm in at the moment. When I worked in the fruit and nut company, that was a lot about PPV, but I was forecasting PPV. I was also forecasting stock and creditors there. Cash was an issue in that company. So we're very interested in what cash is going to look like over the next weeks and months. And when I worked from a private equity company, it was all about cash. It was all about forecasting this week, next week, the week after, cash. And outwards as well. So I was interested from just point of view of making sure I was getting my suppliers paid, short-term cash. Obviously the board and the directors and the owners were interested long-term, what kind of funding they're going to need.
Excellent. I mean, that's incredibly thorough answer. It's a really good stuff. And the thing that I got from that is something that I bang on about all the time in my lessons is the importance of that standard cost. You know, it's what all of management accounting that I teach comes back to. It's the real fundamentals, that cost card. What does it cost me to make something? You know, whether you're using marginal costing or absorption costing, which are the things that we kind of obsess over, but you know, that is the building block of all your forecasts. You know, if you know how much your standard costs are, if you know your standard margins as well, then you can forecast at different activity levels. I imagine though, Noah, and that's, Noah's just turned away. In a building society environment, you're not manufacturing products. So you're not making a sausage like Ian is, or packing some nuts in a bag and selling them to a supermarket. What kind of forecasting would you have to do in your role?
I don't myself participate in any forecasting, just because it is very high end. It's very technical, very skilled, because it is a building society.
Yeah.
But we, in essence, we buy and we sell money.
Yeah.
So at the moment, with everything going on with Corona, with the stamp duty at the moment, our mortgage pipeline has gone through the roof. So it wasn't anticipated. So we need to offset that with savings, but no one's been going out. So we've got a big influx of savings at the moment. So we need to offset the two. So for our forecasting going forwards, we need to take into account the stamp duty isn't going to last forever. Corona isn't going to last forever. And we need to anticipate forward movements and forward changes into our working now. So it is quite intense. It is quite technical. So there's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, and it's something that I know some of the students here would you know, probably remember from their studies, that we have that idea of things like seasonal variations. And I imagine that, you know, in the building society industry, that there are certain times of year where traditionally people buy more houses, so there's more mortgage lending taking place.
Yes.
And then you have those kind of cyclical variations that happen maybe over the economic cycle, maybe every 5 to 10 years as we go through periods of recession, upturn, downturn. And then you've got those random variations that no one could have predicted, and they're the things that come along. And to be honest, if you'd have asked me a year ago, would COVID mean more people are buying houses and taking out mortgages and house prices are going up, I would have said not a chance. Okay, but they're the kind of things that I guess those people you're talking about are having to deal with. You know, what are the consequences of stuff that's going on? So I mean, that sounds mental. Sounds really, really good.
We have a really, really peculiar variation. Is in August, all of the mortgage brokers go on holiday, so everything just stops. So August is always a really rough month for us because nothing really happens. Mortgage brokers aren't pushing cases through, and it's something I would never have known.
It's amazing when you kind of hear these kind of things about particular industries, that once you're inside them, it's like, oh, I never realised that happened. And I'm sure Ian could tell me that until I spoke to people who worked in food production, I didn't realize that everything in food production is turned into something. There's such a small amount of waste, and it's when you kind of hear how things are dealt with, it's like, oh right, I didn't realize that you would actually make money from the leftover bits of whatever it is you're making. But it's like, yeah, everything is sold in the same way. In terms of, you know, I would never have known that you normally have a month where no mortgages are going to go through because your brokers aren't around. It's really, yeah, really, I love hearing those stuff about different industries, which I think is something that's great when you are working within them. Okay, so we've looked at kind of a typical day, and I think both of you, without really saying it, have told me there isn't a typical day in management accounting, but there certainly is kind of a cycle of work that takes place. Okay, something that someone did comment on is they said that, I'm just trying to find the comment here, it's kind of gone up my page a little bit, where it said that most people find numbers boring. They roll your eyes when you say you're studying accounting, that you must be boring. Now, you know, most people, I think that's probably right. And as you guys know, you're reporting to managers within a business who probably hold similar kind of views about the work that you do. So Ian, can I just ask, how do you get those people engaged with the numbers?
I don't find it hard at all. I agree with you. A lot of people have that immediate impact. Oh, it's a boring accountant. What are they going to talk about? But for me, I love it. I really enjoy looking at that, like analysing things, talking to people about it, presenting it. I think as long as you're enthusiastic, as long as you look at things sometimes with different angles, don't be afraid to throw in a different chart or a different graph or something just to help demonstrate something. Show you're enthusiastic, you know, and show you're passionate. Sometimes, you know, you've got to get a bit angry about things. You've got to say, well, hang on a minute, why aren't we flexing our labor right now because demand is falling? What the hell's going on? Don't be afraid to ask those kind of difficult questions. But yeah, I don't have a problem myself in trying to present it. I think if I sat in front of the same managers with the same information week in, week out, I think that would probably get quite boring. But you know, you can make it as interesting as you want to.
And Noah, how do you deal with that?
If I'm honest, just the variety is the spice of life. On my third week, when I've got projects at the moment, I'm changing the way that specific data is presented. So I've gone out, I've reached out to the users of a specific set of data, ask how they would like it presented, and that's what I'm working on. So once that's done, I'll move on to something else. And it's just, you need to be a good salesman because it can be boring. So you need to be a good salesman. You need to make people happy. Just give them what they want.
Yeah, so no, I 100% agree. I think it's about appealing to the things that interest them, and you know, from my experience, most people are interested in either how to make more money. Okay, so if you can show them how you can make more money, or what other people get, not necessarily say interested, but people like to hear about how you could lose lots of money. Okay, they prefer if it's other people losing money, but they get really switched on if it's like, all right, we could lose that amount of money if we don't do something. Let's do something about it. And it's, you know, trying to put things in those kind of terms, I always think really engaged. I love what you said, Noah, about, you know, do you put it in a graph? Absolutely. Okay, and you know, how many meetings of directors have I sat in where they don't like tables of numbers, but give them a graph and everyone is suddenly, their eyes light up and they can suddenly understand. You know, it's a bit like when you put a set of accounts together and you've got a row of zeros and people go, I don't know how many zeros there is or what that number is, and go, well, actually, let me talk about these numbers in percentage terms. And so it's like, all right, I get percentages. Yeah, that's fine. Got those. So yeah, you're absolutely right. It's how you present the data. Okay, Laura's made a lovely comment. How is making money boring? Okay, that's something that we as accountants, I know, you know, absolutely, but how is making money boring? But yeah, there are some people that for some reason just think that it's dull. So we've got a little bit of time left. So if anyone's got any more questions, feel free to put them in. I've got a few more things that I wanted to just ask Noah and Ian. And I guess the first thing is, Noah, you talked about being a good salesman, and we need to be a good salesman as a management accountant. So I'd like you to think as if you were a salesman right now and you were trying to sell management accounting to people. So you were trying to sell what the benefits of management accounting are, why people should be a management accountant. What would you say is good about being a management accountant?
I've actually gone over this quite a bit recently. My partner's little sister, she is now going into college, she's looking at accounting. And I always sell it to her that if you're into fashion, Louis Vuitton, they need a finance team. If you're into automotive, Ferrari, they need a finance team. If you take something that really interests you, I can almost guarantee they have a finance team. So if you're good at it, you could potentially end up going to do exactly what you want to do.
I love that.
Everyone needs that team. And for me, that is the biggest selling point, which I have.
And as a management accountant within Ferrari, you're producing financial information for the board of Ferrari to make better decisions. Now that's what you're doing. So you're telling them that this car that you've just developed is going to be too expensive. Okay, you're not going to make any money on that car because the parts are too expensive and the retail price is much, much lower than you could achieve. Ferraris would be a really bad one to use there because I think Ferrari owners will pay anything for a car. But absolutely right, Louis Vuitton, you'd be looking at, right, we've got a new handbag that we want to sell, but you'll be pricing it and saying, look at the cost of making this. If we want to maintain our normal margin, we're going to have to charge, like 27 grand to actually sell this bag. Are people going to buy it at that price point? So, and they're the kind of decisions that you'd be looking to make within those businesses, and they're the kind of things that as management accountants we can help to influence. financial accountants is just recording some numbers in boxes and sending them to company's house. Ian, how would you sell management accounting to someone? So what is great about management accounting?
Yeah, I agree with the person that asked that question. Actually, how is making money boring? I mean, it's really not. I mean, I went to a private equity owned garage company. It was loss making. It was only 11 garages strong. They wanted to grow it. They wanted to turn it into a profit making company. And 3.5 years later, when I left, it was profit making. We had turned that business into a profit making. Not just me, everybody else had a huge impact. But we had managed to turn that company into a profit making business. It was such a fantastic experience to do that. Where I am at the moment, 2.5 years ago, we were a loss making site. Right now, we're a profit making site. We're doing really, really well. We've turned the business around. We've made it into what it is now, a nice profit making site. So yeah, completely agree. How is making money not exciting? It is. It's great.
Thanks for that, Ian. If you were going to warn someone about going into management accounting, and just give them that caveat of, oh, don't do management accounting because of X, Y, or Z. Okay, what are the drawbacks or the problems, do you think, or what's bad about management accounting?
So I've got a couple of answers to that. So first of all, I think one thing you can fall into being a management accountant is being responsible for everything. And I remember quite a while ago, it was actually when I was working in Auditor, someone said to me, you've got two really useful tools, one that everybody knows about, that's the calculator, and the other one is a mirror. Because every number on there is almost always not owned by you, it's owned by someone else in the room. So if you can just put that mirror, if you ask a question about that, well, actually, that's this guy over here. Can you answer that for us? And that will make the business more responsible. So my warning would be, don't take it all as kind of, it's all my fault. The numbers are bad and it's all my fault. It's not. It's actually almost always somebody else's fault, which is quite beautiful in a way. So yeah, so I think that would be how I'd answer that. I did have a second point. I can't remember what it was.
So I love that you said in terms of the benefits is that you're part of the team that turns the business around and makes a loss-making business profitable. But then when you're saying drawbacks, is you talk about, oh, you just blame everyone else if it's going badly.
Not quite like that.
Okay. And Noah, what would you say are any problems or drawbacks or bad things to do with management accounting?
Some people will want an answer right there on the spot, which can be a big downfall. Mm-hmm. Just because you do produce data on a monthly basis and you can switch things up and you analyze different sectors of your organization, you can have someone reach out and just ask a quick fire question. I need this now. So you need to drop everything and you need to be willing just to drop everything, quickly pick it up, get it done accurately, and then present it. Mm-hmm. I find that is one big drawback.
Yeah. I agree. It's when you're in those board meetings and, one of the directors says, have you done a certain piece of analysis? It's like, well, no one's ever asked me for that ever before. I didn't think it would be useful. And do you really want it? And they really do want it. And then you've got to recreate a report that you never thought anyone would ever ask for, but suddenly the IT director wants it and you've got to produce it for them. So you're right. Is that almost because there aren't rules and because it isn't a statutory document, it can be anything you want it to be, and the directors can shape that. And that you're absolutely right. That can be really difficult to suddenly have those things sprung upon you. Okay. There are a couple of questions, so let's just quickly go through. So Noah, I'm going to go to you with Laura's question here. What advice would you give someone trying to get into management accounting? So if you're sitting at home watching Noah and Ian right now thinking that they're my superheroes, that's who I want to be, what advice would you give them about how to get into management accounting?
I won't give the obvious answer of go find a management accounting position because it's too simple and it isn't the route which I took. Mm-hmm. If you get yourself in an organization, just in the financial team, on the way up, say yes to everything. Once you're at the top, you can start saying no. So as soon as your foot's through the door, if there's a committee they want you to join, say yes. If there's an opportunity for a charity raffle or whatnot, or just a charity activity, say yes. If they want you to help out on a weekend, say yes. Because when the opportunity does come up for a management accounting position, when you put yourself forward, they know you. They've seen you. They've seen you around the office. They've seen you on the weekend when you've been helping out. They've seen you at staff activities. The management team have always seen you. So they're going to remember you, and it will push you forwards, and it can potentially secure you the job which you're after.
I agree, and I remember now having a discussion with you a while ago about a possible role within your business and whether you wanted to apply for it. And I think you were a bit reluctant because you thought this is a bit too senior for me. It's not the right time. And my view was apply for it. And even if you don't get it, what you've done is you've shown leadership that you're keen, enthusiastic, and you want something. You know, I said, if it's ridiculous, don't go for CEO, you know, if you've just started 2 weeks ago, because you're unlikely to get that. But if it's a role that you think, actually, this is probably me in a year's time, apply for it now if it's available. If you get it, amazing, because they think you've got the skills to do it. But if not, you've shown that you are ambitious and you want to be there. Okay, and I think it's so easy just to say, that's not right for me now, I can't apply for it. But you're absolutely right. Get your face known, let people know who you are. Ian, what would your guidance be for someone trying to break into management accounting and get that first management accounting role?
Yeah, well, I've jumped around a lot, as I've just said, and I would say don't be afraid to do that. You know, I don't think it's that bad these days. If you go for a job, you experience it for 6 to 9 months and it's not quite right, and go somewhere else. I think that's perfectly fine. And I agree with Noah. If the opportunity comes up, yeah, go for it. Even if you think it's not quite me, it's not quite what I want, it's not a management account role, maybe it's something slightly different, you know, try it. Why not give it a go? And you might end up thinking, actually, this is great. You know, I went into an internal audit role and I was thinking, is it right? Maybe I want to be a management accountant, but it was fine. It was great. And it was a really good training ground to go on to other things. So yeah, don't be afraid.
Excellent. Now, Cosmina's got a question. She's asking directly to Noah, and she's saying, Noah, why did you choose ACCA and not CIMA as a qualification, bearing in mind you're a management accountant?
For me, I did look at CIMA, and I went down the ACCA route just because of options. CIMA was very management accounting orientated, whereas ACCA is a broader spectrum. And I wanted those options. I'm still in the infancy of my accountancy career. So if in 5 years' time, I think management accounting isn't for me, I want to go do tax. I've seen it. So it just leaves me options, and that's what I like. So that's the reason as to why.
So just because it gave you that flexibility, if you decided after 3 years of working in management accounts, actually, I want to work in statutory accounting, or I want to work in tax or compliance, you felt it gave you the ability to be able to move to another department more easily than CIMA, which you felt maybe a little bit more narrow in focus.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Excellent. Nicole's asked a question, would you not recommend the CFA qualification? Now, by CFA, I'm assuming you mean the financial advisor qualification, or is ACCA a better option? Now, Nicole, I think that's a question that is very much going to be based on what your aspirations are. If you do want to work in financial advice, clearly CFA is going to be a better qualification. If you want to work in management accounting, so like Noah or Ian are, then I would say of the two, ACCA is probably going to be a better option. I may have misunderstood CFA, maybe something else in this kind of context, but if it is the financial advisor qualification, I think it is. If you want to be a financial advisor, definitely CFA. But if you want to work in a similar sort of role to Noah or Ian, ACCA. Oh, Nicole has got a question here for Ian. Ian, do you prefer working in industry or working in accounting practice?
Well, the immediate answer would be industry. I'd love my time in industry. And I think I was quite young when I was a practicing accountant and just kind of getting used to the way things were done. I think it was a great backing for me, you know, in terms of specifically where I worked at a kind of a small to medium sized accountancy firm, you know, kind of paper bag or plastic bag jobs, work it out from there kind of thing. So it was really great grounding in order for me to do all the things that I went on to do. Having said that now, you know, I'm 22 years into my career. I have on occasions thought, you know what, I think I'd make a really good practicing accountant now, having seen what I've seen, being able to then go into businesses and help them, whether it's just putting together accounts or whether it's giving them business advice going forward. So for me, I think I went the right route. I went into industry once I'd qualified. But you know, I think you can get a lot out of being in practice as well. So just I think it's a personal choice.
Okay, thanks, Ian. And if we're okay to ask you, because someone has kind of been curious, you talk really passionately about the jobs that you've had, and you know, they all sound really exciting. I mean, I know working with fruit and nuts to me sounds like the most exciting job in the world. Why have you moved around kind of so frequently? You know, despite the fact you seem to have found these jobs really, really engaging. So, what are the reasons behind that?
Various different reasons. But I think mainly I kind of see my career as a series of projects. Like, you know, it's a project. So when I was at the dried fruit and nut company, we got to the stage where we sold the business. When I was at the garage company, we made an acquisition. We built the companies to be profit making. And I just wanted the next challenge. Now, yeah, it could have been that next challenge was right at that company, or it could have been that it was somewhere else. So maybe it's just luck and the way the cards have fallen. But yeah, I mean, I don't want to get bored. I want to move around. I do often think, if somebody asked me in an interview, what are you going to do in 5 years' time? If I was purely honest, it would probably be, I probably won't be working for you if I was given the job. So yeah, a really, really difficult question to answer. But I just like to keep it interesting. And yeah, there's other things there's other reasons. Sometimes there's personal reasons. There was a lot of traveling when I worked for a bank that was involved, and I didn't want to do that. Yeah, and lots of other reasons, but generally it's just I see my career as a set of projects, and I want to keep it interesting.
Okay, thanks, Ian. I completely understand. I mean, the thing that made me move out of doing a real accounting job, was that I got bored by routine. I got bored with month end happening every single month. And yes, you could help to influence decisions, but you still had to run the month end routines. And the thing that I love about teaching is that every single class full of people are different, and you have a different conversation with them. And, you know, I may have someone like you in a class, Ian, and we can talk about nuts and fruit all day. And then I'll have Noah in the class and we can talk about boxing. And so it's you know, different people bring different things to a class. And that's what I love about my job. So I completely get that whole idea of, you know, of kind of seeing it as a project and thinking, right, my job's done here. Now I've got to look for the next challenge. I've got to do something different, because otherwise I'm just going to get bored doing the same thing if things aren't changing. Okay, now time is very much against us, and I think we've addressed most of the questions that I've seen in the chat box. So I'm just going to ask each of you one question just to finish off today. And I'm just going to ask you, what one skill do you think is the most important skill that a management accountant needs to have? Okay, so I'm going to start with Ian and then we'll finish with Noah. So Ian, what one skill as a management accountant is the most important thing you need to be a management accountant?
It's very simple, and it's been covered already. It's to make complicated things simple. So you're always going to be confronted with a difficult spreadsheet or a difficult set of numbers or something difficult to explain. And you just need to be able to translate that down to what all this means is you've got too much overtime, or something really simple, a message that you can deliver. What this means is your stock take wasn't very good a couple of weeks ago, and therefore the accounts have been wrong. You need to tighten up your stock take procedures. So just to make something really, really complicated, because it's always going to be complicated, and I can't imagine the difficulties that Noah has, into something really simple. And I think that's the skill.
Okay, thanks, Ian. And Noah, what do you think? Most important skill a management accountant needs?
I'm exactly the same as Ian. You need to be able to take something complicated and turn it into something simple.
Mm-hmm.
I've read a little article a few months back, and I took away from it that if you can't explain it to a 10-year-old in 2 minutes, you haven't got it. And it is as simple as that. You need to be able to explain what your message to a 10-year-old in 2 minutes. It needs to be quick fire. Take something really complicated, turn it into something simple.
Excellent. And I It's exactly the thing that I tell students when they're doing written questions. Is if you're doing a written question to explain something, and I know some of my classes are my students are in the room and they'll know that I say this all the time. It's the my mum rule, or sometimes call it the my nan rule. Okay, could I explain this to my mum? Okay, would my mum understand it? And that's my test for, is it a good answer? Is it something that someone that with no financial background could understand? So, I mean, thanks both of you for backing me up there. It has reached the end of our headline slot for today in the Attitude Festival. So it does fall to me to thank Ian and thank Noah for their time today. Thank you to everyone here that came along today. It's been an absolute pleasure to host you. I do actually want to leave you with, there's a lovely comment that Sarah said, when she followed on from Ian talking about why he moved roles. She said, I guess when you stop feeling passionate, it's time to move on. Do what you love and enjoy. And I think that's a lovely message to finish today. So thanks to everyone. Hope you enjoy the rest of the festival, and I will hopefully see some of you on our forum on Wednesday night. So thank you very much, and goodbye.